So last time we talked about who translated it, the literature of it. Kumarajiva translated it, and it was translated again by Max Muller around 80. And then we also talk about the 3 significant sutras introducing Amitabha Buddha. We already talked about that. And we also talk about the meaning of Amitabha. What is Amita, what is Ba? And Amitabha is also known as Amitayus. We explained that already. So the last 4 questions asked by the Buddha immediately before his nirvana. Ananda asked these 4 questions. We already have talked about it in detail. And the reason why we brought these last 4 questions up is because in the sutra, the first sentence is, "Thus it was heard by me." Thus it was heard by me in the book, in the sutra. Most of the sutra, 90% of the sutra starts with, "Thus it was heard by me," or "Thus have I heard." Why? Because that's what the Buddha said. In the future, all sutras started with that sentence. So that was in the second question. When we compile the Buddha's teaching later, with what words would begin the sutra? "Thus have I heard." So if a sutra does not begin with "Thus have I heard," it may not be the Buddha's teaching. It may not be, but there are some exceptions, of course. In the first sentence, "Thus it was heard by me," the first sentence of the sutra, "Thus it was heard by me," every congregation of the Buddha requires 6 conditions to fulfill. In other words, in almost every congregation, not just the Buddha's congregation, actually in every congregation, there are 6 requirements, 6 conditions. Now, "Thus it was heard by me," thus, it means faith. That word "thus" means faith. Why? Because only people of the same faith would come together for that congregation. So the first requirement is the faith requirement. In any kind of assembly, in any kind of congregation, only those who have a common belief, only those who have certain belief to talk about, to analyze, or to research into, then they come together. So faith is one of the most important requirements, the 6 requirements. Thus means the faith requirements. In the Chinese language, we call it 6种成就, 信成就, faith. The second one, "It was heard by me." Thus, it was heard by me. It was heard by me. There must be hearers, people who listened, the audience. It was heard by me, that means there's certain amount of audience, certain number of audience, so there's audience condition. In the Chinese language is 闻成就. It was heard by me, audience. The third requirement, in the sutra it says at one time, it's a time requirement, at certain time, at one time. Now all these up to 1,250 bhikshus, the first sentence, "Thus it was heard by me," up to 1,250 bhikshus already contain the 6 conditions. That means for the congregation to be successfully held, you require these 6 conditions. So just the first sentence already have indicated the 6 conditions, requirements fulfilled. That's the reason why the Buddha starting to talk about certain teaching, some of his teaching. So thus the faith requirement, "It was heard by me," audience requirement, at one time, time requirement. There must be a host, it's a host requirement, the blessed, that means the Buddha. There must be a host in any kind of congregation. 12 at Sravasti, in the Jeta Grove, in the garden of Anathapindaka, the place requirement, location requirement. They are at Sravasti, in that city, in a monastery, Jeta Grove Monastery. Now, together with a large assembly of bhikshus is the audience requirement. Now, there the hearer. In other words, there must be someone who listened to the Buddha's teaching and compiled the teaching later. So it was heard by me. Who was the hearer? When the 6 requirements are there, then the congregation began. The Buddha has 10 epithets, the 10 names. Buddha has 10 names, so if you reading other sutras, it may use other names. The first name is thus come one. In the Chinese language is Ru Lai. The Sanskrit is Tathagata. What does it mean, thus come one? This is the saint who came to this world with a universal truth to teach. Thus come one. The second is worthy of offerings, like the arahats. So he's worthy of offerings by humans and by heavenly beings. He's worthy of offerings by all beings, like the arahats. So the Buddha is also called arahat. As a matter of fact, in the Theravada school, a Buddha is the arahat. The third is right and universal knowledge. 正遍知三藐三菩提. In the Sanskrit language is Samyak Sambuddha. You heard that mentioned all the time in the Chinese sutras. Right and universal knowledge. That means the Buddha, also called Samya Sambuddha, because he has right and universal knowledge of everything. 4. Perfect clarity and conduct. 明行主, Sanskrit, Vidya Charana Sampanna. It's also called perfect clarity and conduct. He has perfect clarity of what he was talking about, and he had perfect conduct. Well gone, that means he's gone to the world where there's no mental afflictions. He's gone to Nirvana. Well gone. He's already gone to Nirvana. Sugata. Well gone. It's also called well gone. So the 6th, understanding the world. 世间解. Sanskrit, lokavit. Understanding the world. The 7th name is unexcelled, worthy. 无上士. In the Sanskrit language is anuttara. There's nothing on top of that. There's nothing on top of him. Anuttara. Nuttara is on top. Anuttara, there's nothing higher than that. Unexcelled, worthy. Number 8 names, leader of all people. 条御丈夫. In the Sanskrit language is Purusa Dhamya Sarati. Number 9, teacher of gods and humans. 天人师. Sanskrit language is Shasta Deva Manu Zayanam. Teacher of gods and humans. So people say, is Buddha a god? There's so many gods. Buddha is the teacher of all gods and all humans. This sutra on Amitabha Sutra contains information in there which is very similar to other common religions as believing in the concept of heaven. Some of the religions believe in the concept of heaven. When a person dies, then he can go to heaven. But in this sutra, in the Buddha's teaching, it contains details as to how to get to heaven. Where is heaven? What does heaven look like? How do you prepare yourself to go to heaven? What must you do in order to go to heaven? Not just say, I will go to heaven. Not just say that I believe in God and then I can go to heaven. Just a simply belief does not qualify for going to heaven. You must know how to get there, what are the conditions, and also, where is heaven? Now basically heaven has 2 kinds of heavens. Heavens with non-retrogression and heaven with retrogression. There are 28 heavens that if you perform all kinds of good deeds in your present life, in your previous life, after you die, you go to those heavens, the 28 heavens, but they are retrogressive. In other words, once you enjoy millions and millions years of happiness in those heavens, you still will retrogress into life and death. Because you haven't achieved nirvana. You haven't achieved that universal Tathagata. You haven't achieved that nirvana, Samya Sambuddhi. if you are in heavens, that after you enjoy happiness, you will progress again to the 6 paths of reincarnation. In other words, you will progress into the 3 vicious realms or the 3 virtuous realms. The 3 vicious realms being animal, hell, and hungry ghost. The other 3 will be humans, asuras, and heavenly beings. You still reincarnate, in other words, going to those heavens, much better than in this world, of course. This is a world of suffering. But if you go to those heavens, you don't have any suffering. But you still died in there. But there's also heaven that is non-retrogressive. In other words, once you get to that heaven, you won't go back into reincarnation again. And Amitabha's Pure Land, Sukhavati, is that kind of heaven that is non-retrogressive. Not coming back again for reincarnation. So there are very detailed descriptions as what heavens are all about. Where are they, how, what conditions, it all laid out in the Buddhist teaching. Not just simply a belief. I believe in God and then I can go to heaven. If you believe in God, if you kill, if you steal, if you lie, if you commit sexual misconduct, if you do all kinds of unvirtuous deeds, you still go to heaven? Wouldn't that be fair? So you have to, now we found the Buddhist teaching. This is one of the many Buddhist teaching for those who were not successful in their meditation, for going to nirvana in the present life. They can rely on Amitabha's assistance, Amitabha's vows to receive your soul into that heaven. In there, it's just like a university where you study to be the Buddha. You never retrogress back again. And many people have taken up that kind of method, because how much meditation, how much time, given the busyness of our daily lives now, that we spend in meditation. We're so busy with our daily life that we don't have that much time to spend in meditation. In the ancient days, people spend 20 hours per day in meditation. They spend all their time in meditation. They may be able to attain nirvana in the present life. But we are so busy, and also we are not right now in the Dharma ending, the starting of the Dharma ending period, where gradually there will be no more Buddhist teaching. In the first 500 years after the demise of the Buddha, after the nirvana of the Buddha, there are still a lot of arahats. In other words, they achieve arahatship, Buddhahood, in their present lifetimes. But as time goes on, less and less people are like that, because there's more and more mental afflictions. And now this is an expedient way, since we have to die anyway. So after you die, which way do you choose? You choose to come back to this world again to experience the same hardship or even worse hardships than your present life? So you have to make a choice. You have to make a selection. When I die, I don't want to come back to this world again. This is a world of suffering. I want to go to that university where I learn from the Buddha to be the Buddha. And that is the Amitabha Buddha's land, Sukhavati, or the land of bliss. So these are the different names. I'm just explaining. This is a sidetrack. Teachers of gods, and when we mention gods and humans, I just mentioned that. That's a very high, a profound, a subtle concept of heaven that the Buddha expounded to us. And we have to go there. Because in this world, you're learning from temporal monks like us. But in there, you're learning from Amitabha. He's your professor. You're learning from Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. He is your professor. You're learning from Mahasprapta. He's your professor. And many arahats in there, in that land, that you're going to learn from the Buddhist teaching. How does that land, what does that land look like? All right? The 10th one with the Buddha, the awakened one, the well-honored one, is also called Buddha, is also called Bhagavat. If you encounter the word Bhagavat, which is in here, the blessed Bhagavat, that is Buddha, same name. So there are 10 names, then you should know all about this. I'm going through this sutra in detail. So after you learn this sutra, you must have picked up a lot after you learn all this, because there's so much in the Buddhist teaching. If you live up to 100 years, I don't know, maybe you can only read about 50% or 20% of the Buddhist teaching. There's so much in there. So much translation, more and more of the English translation too. The Chinese translation, if you live up to 100 years, you don't even have time to read all the literature once. But there are more and more English translations now, done by many scholars. So here it says that Buddha was at one time at Sravasti. Where is Sravasti? In the Chinese language, the capital of the kingdom of Kosala, where the residents of who was the king of Kosala at that time, at the time of the Buddha? King Prasenajit, Bosili Huang, which with the kingdom of Magadha covered most of the country in Sakyamuni's time. In other words, Kosala and Magadha are the two large countries, territories. The Buddha spent a lot of rainy seasons in there, the Vasa, the rainy seasons. The Buddha spent about at least 50% of the rainy seasons out of the 49 rainy seasons, almost about 50% of rainy season in Sravasti, some in other parts like Magadha. And it says also the location in Sravasti in a Jeta Grove, in a monastery by the name Jeta Grove. Jeta Grove. Now, in the garden of Anatta Pintaka. Now, what is Anatta Pintaka? That's a Sanskrit. It means feeder of the helpless. In other words, this man, he liked to do a lot of charity work. It is also called the feeder. He always feed the helpless people who didn't have food to eat. Feeder of the helpless. He was a rich merchant in Sravasti. He paid for the construction of a monastery for the Buddhist Sangha in a park owned by Prince Jeta. The Jeta monastery was one of the most famous of the Buddhist monasteries in India, located just outside the city of Sravasti. The land was owned by Prince Jeta, who donated it to the Buddha, and Anatta Pintaka paid for the construction of all the buildings. It's still there. One day if you visit India, you can go to that garden, Anatta Pintaka garden, in the Jetavana Grove. It's still there. In Sravasti, in the ancient city of Sravasti. So that's the location. As we just mentioned earlier, there must be 6 conditions. There must be a host, which is the Buddha who talked about in a congregation. There must be a hearer, Ananda, listened to the Buddha's teaching and recorded all these later. And also, at one time, there's a time condition. And also, location, there's a location. Now, the audience of bhikshus, it says with 1,200 bhikshus, together with a large company of bhikshus. What's the meaning of bhikshus? In the common English language, we call them monks. A bhikshu is called a monk. Bhikshuni is a nun. Bhikshuni, a nun. Bhikshu is a Sanskrit word. Bhikshu, it means a mendicant flower, which means that a beggar, a religious practitioner who goes on alms round to beg for food. Why do they beg for food? Are they lazy? They don't want to do any work? Are they lazy? No, they wanted to spend all their time in the practice. And also they want to make themselves humble. So subduing ego. So you're begging around, that means in order to keep this body going, you have to eat food. It's not that you glorify your ego, your I. You cook your own food. You go to work and you earn the money and you buy food and you're humble. You're very humble, and reducing the ego. And at the same time, you spend all your time not in preparing the food, cooking the food, washing the dishes, and washing the bowl. You spend all your time in the practice. So imagine how much time a bhikshu spend in the practice, and they become the Buddha in his or her present lifetime, because they spend every day in the practice, in meditation. Every day, every minute they're meditating, and they have the joy in meditation. Now, in meditation, if you meditate for a long time, finally, the first thing you experience is the joy in you. And the joy starts to increase more and more and more and more until you're overwhelmed by the joy. You don't attach to the joy, but you're overwhelmed by that joy. So they want to spend all the time in the practice. What is a bhikshu? Someone who has broken evil. They don't want to do any evil. They don't want to commit any evil deeds. Abstain from killing, abstain from sexual misconduct, abstain from stealing, abstain from killing. There are 250 precepts of a bhikshu, and we'll explain that later. Another meaning of bhikshu is someone who tries to eliminate mental delusions or mental afflictions. Today, we explain the 6 conditions of a congregation. We explain faith, because only those who believe in the same faith they come together. We explained the hearer. Ananda is the hearer. He later spoke out what the Buddha's teaching was all about. And then we also have the host. We also have the time, the location, and the audience. The bhikshus are the audience. All the bhikshus are the audience. Why 1,250? Now, the sutra starts very analytically and logically. The sutra starts with all these conditions coming through. What does it show you? It shows you everything is cause and effect. Without those causes, so 6 causes, no congregation. The fact that you're coming here today listening is not without a cause. The fact that you believe in the Buddhist teaching now and you want to go to the Pure Land is not without a cause. Everything is causality. There's no effect without a cause. So that's why we have to cultivate, we have to germinate the seeds for causes for going to the Pure Land, to going to heaven, to going to Amitabha's land, causes to be the Buddha, causes to get away from mental afflictions, causes to get away from reincarnation, causes to get away from all this suffering, causes to help other people, not just yourself, to get away from suffering. So the sutra in the first sentence already have explained causality. So just one sentence, you can think about it and start to enlighten yourself. There's so much in it just in the first sentence, up to with 1,250 bhikshus. Of course, there's more to go, more to come. So this is a treasure, a human treasure. It contains saving yourself and saving your folks. But how many people are interested in it? What are they interested in? Material, wealth, reputation, money, greediness, hatred, jealousy, depression. Are they interested in the Buddhist teaching? It is so important. But how many people are really practicing it and interested in it? Now you have. You must appreciate what you yourself have done. You have opened that door for yourself. When you learn it, tell others, tell all your folks that the door can be opened for them too. This is our path. This is what we're going to do.